Some advisors are super helpful and encouraging. Some are indifferent, and some can be really bad. Many students reach out to me to complain about the way that they are supervised. And many say, I wish I knew it could be that bad. In that case, I would have found myself a different advisor. You have probably heard that not every business company has a great work environment, and some companies can be really toxic. Well, the same goes for academia. Most advisors are reasonably good and provide support, but still the probability of getting into a bad lab is pretty high. In this episode, I discuss how to figure out what advisor you need and how to choose the right advisor. I will try to give you a general idea of what to consider and where you should be careful. So this is mostly related to natural sciences and engineering disciplines where I have experience and where I work. And if you look for other disciplines, I hope you will still find this episode useful. I'm not going to discuss how to apply for a PhD or how to win an interview. This will be the topic for a different episode. Instead, I will talk about how to make the choice that will maximize your chances as a PhD student. Your advisor is the person who sharpens your professional skills, shapes your perception of science, and drives your motivation. There are many things to consider when choosing an advisor, and we will go over the main points. But before I go into details, I must mention that your criteria should depend on your preferences and your values. So try to talk to other students, talk to professors at your current university, talk to your family and friends, listen to different podcasts, look for YouTube videos, read articles about PhD. Try to understand how to get the most out of it. Once your PhD starts, there will be almost no way back. Very few students who become unhappy can change the group within the first year. The majority will unfortunately continue till the end, or quit somewhere in the middle, which is not the scenario you're looking for. I want to start with some general considerations. Think about what kind of advisor do you need? What are your preferences? Don't think about the topic first. Think about the advisor, their personality, and the opportunities they can offer in their lab. I will go over different aspects one by one. So let's look at what PhD is about first. Without defining your goals, it's hard to decide on what you're looking for. So different people define PhD differently. And because this is my solo episode, I will say what I think is important about PhD, but others may see it differently. What I suggest is to see PhD as the time when you first develop your technical skills, for example, how to do research, how to use certain instruments and analyze data. Second is when you develop some expertise in a certain field where your PhD is in. And third, you develop your personal skills. If I put things into a short list, an ideal PhD should help you with the following. First, how to become a critical and creative thinker. Second, how to think independently, but also how to work in teams and collaborate. Third, it helps you understand your strengths and weaknesses. Next, how to accept failures. During PhD, you normally experience a lot of failures. It's part of your PhD experience, it's part of your learning experience, and this is totally normal. Number 5 is how to pick the right project, how to jumpstart that project, and of course, how to bring it to perfection. So if you want to stay in academia, you also learn how to make discoveries and how to publish your papers, how to submit patents, and so on. So like I said, this is an ideal situation. In reality, you get a bit of this and a little bit of that, and then you graduate. Although PhD takes 3 to 5 years, of course, depending on the country and the program, this may sound like a lot of time, but in fact, it's not. PhD time flies. Why am I saying all this to you? It's because the advisor is the person who directly influences the knowledge and skills you acquire and how well you can use them. One thing that I find very important is mentorship. I always encourage students to look for an advisor who's also a good mentor. Ideally, your advisor should provide not only a proper research environment, but also become the source of inspiration and guidance in your pursuit of your dreams. Ideally, an advisor should not be the person who will be simply assigning tasks to you and supervising your research efforts. Why? Well, it's because you may miss on mentoring that helps you develop your personal skills, that can help you understand your strengths and weaknesses, and be very careful in your career steps. So personally, I often see students, both undergrad and PhD, who completely overlook the mentoring component of a PhD. Most students are not quite aware of mentoring and do not know what it is. As a result, they often put 100% focus on their research because they view it as the key to earning a PhD. But in my view, mentorship can add a lot more on top of your research, especially if you want to pursue your career in academia, R&D, or even entrepreneurship. This view is just not only mine, it's also shared by many professors and senior researchers who had excellent mentors and who attributed part of their success to their mentors. Now, there are at least 3 reasons why it's hard to find a good advisor and mentor. First, most advisors are very busy and cannot allocate enough time for every student in their lab. So they can mentor, yes, but only to a limited degree. Second, some advisors think that mentorship is basically babysitting, and that students should be growing into independent scholars by themselves, by doing their PhD on their own. The logic there is that PhD is not for everyone, and that if you cannot cope with research and that pressure at a proper level, then you probably shouldn't get it. I do not share this view, but you should be prepared that some advisors do think this way. Third, there are many advisors who simply don't care about mentorship. They see their work as simple research supervision that should result in publications so they can get, more grants, and they don't really pay attention to other needs of students. This happens quite often, so be prepared for this. So, if you understand what to expect from your advisor, you will be able to correctly plan your PhD and post-PhD time. And you will be able to also incorporate personal development and your next career steps, preparation for those career steps in your PhD plan overall. Now, what aspects should you consider when choosing a PhD advisor? First, it's your research topic. Some students have a clear idea of what to work on, and other students are still unsure at the time that they start their PhD. Ask yourself, how much are you gravitating to a specific research topic? What if eventually you won't like the group that works on this topic? Will you be ready to sacrifice your hopes about the topic and look for a better group or a better advisor? My opinion is the following. If your department has a rotational system, do use it to explore at least several labs. If you do not have a choice, then make sure you understand your advisor and the prospects of your project before you sign your PhD contract. Later in this episode, I will cover some of the questions that you can ask your potential advisor. Next, do not forget that your research topic should be good enough to keep you excited for years. But still, the topic can change along the way, and you may want to ask your potential advisor about how much flexibility you will have if the project does not go as successfully as you anticipated. In some cases, your topic is fixed until your defense, and in other cases, you will have a chance to explore multiple research directions. So here, I should note that many researchers, many students, develop a truly deep passion about their topic only when they start getting publishable results. This is absolutely normal. This is something that we see across many labs. On the contrary, some students become disinterested in their research despite having much passion at the beginning. This often happens after too many failures or simply due to a wrong supervision and a boring research routine. This is where a good supervisor makes a big difference. So passion is important, but it should not be your only compass, only your guidance when navigating the offers. Look for the environment in the lab and look who your advisor really is. If you're being interviewed, then of course you want to demonstrate that you will stay focused on a specific project or topic for your entire PhD. But internally, yourself, you need to understand that things often go non-linearly during PhD. I suggest that you identify at least several research directions that are exciting to you. If you have only one research topic on your mind, you may miss an opportunity to join a great group that works in a different field, but they do outstanding research there. Remember that you can become passionate about almost any topic when you have the right advisor. And you can lose all your passion with the wrong advisor. In addition, I should mention that if your research topic aligns with your plans after your PhD, you will likely have a better motivation. For example, if you want to go into biopharma and you probably cannot really do a PhD in quantum materials, that will not help you. So if you want to do a PhD with a specific goal, try to find the advisor who can help you stay focused on that goal. The novelty of research is also important. So not every professor works on potentially groundbreaking projects. Of course, if you ask directly, everyone will tell you that their projects are new and exciting. But on average, this is not the case. The degree of novelty is very hard to evaluate for a student. So perhaps you want to talk to the senior colleagues who know the field, ideally professors from a current department. And I want you to understand a very simple balance between novelty and risk. The more daring, unusual, and novel your study is, the more likely things can fail along the way, and the more time and energy such a project may require from you. However, if you succeed, the value of your work will be greater, and your satisfaction with your PhD and your career opportunities in academia will also be higher. Now, it doesn't translate as easily into industry, but for the academic careers, that's definitely the case. On the contrary, a simple project which lacks creativity and novelty can be easy to execute. You will be moving faster in some way. But in this case, it may go unnoticed by an academic community because it might be too boring. This also means that you are far less likely to get an award and be able to get a senior academic position in the future. Now, every project is on the spectrum between the most daring, risky, and the most boring and sort of useless. Some students prefer risky projects because they feel ready for it. And others may want something in between, balancing risk with more predictable outcome. On top of this, there is also the aspect of supervision. A risky project often requires a good supervisor who's available to you for a lot of discussions and who's knowledgeable to give you proper research advice when you feel stuck. And believe me, you will feel stuck a lot in the risky projects. With this, we're moving to the next question, which is, do you need a lot of supervision or do you want to work alone? Some students need more supervision because they learn faster this way, but others cannot work efficiently under close supervision. Too much supervision can feel like micromanagement, and that can put a lot of pressure on you. For example, myself, when I was a PhD student or a postdoc, I preferred as much freedom as possible because that was the most efficient way I could learn. A great supervisor knows how to balance micromanagement and freedom for each student individually. The problem is that many supervisors have very tight schedule and cannot allocate enough time to each student, which can lead to unintentional or sometimes intentional disbalances either towards micromanagement or freedom. And this is why it's important to know if your potential supervisor is interested in receiving your feedback and hearing your opinion on their approaches. How can you learn about it? So in my opinion, the best way is to ask the supervisor directly how they manage students in terms of their balance, and then talk to the current group members and alumni about their experience. If you don't see any red flags, if what you hear aligns with your preferences, then most likely you will not face challenges in this regard. Now, think about the mentoring you want to receive too. Of course, most students want to get the most out of their PhDs. However, it's rare that supervisors can spend enough time on training and mentoring every single student. I already covered mentorship at the beginning of this episode, but I think it's important to talk a little bit more about it. A professor has all sorts of duties, plus there are usually more than a few students in the lab. So there is never enough time to spend on each student. As a result, PhD students are often expected to learn a lot of things on their own, with some occasional help from the supervisor. Some people don't think this is right, but others may see it as an unavoidable aspect of today's academia. So I'm not going into this. What I want you to understand is that you have the right information that can guide your choice. This is the key. What is mentoring? So it's when your advisor shares with you their experience and knowledge that goes beyond your research. So first of all, decide which specific mentoring you will need in the next few years. For example, do you want to excel at presentations and at writing? Then you may need to develop the right communication skills, and you need extensive feedback on that from your supervisor. Will your advisor be able to provide it? Or maybe you want to stay in academia and you need to understand different aspects of how to land a tenure track position in the future. Or maybe you want to understand deeper what it means to be a researcher. There are a lot of topics you can discuss with your supervisor, but don't forget that the time is limited and you want to emphasize some topics over others. Now, what should you do to find the right advisor as a mentor? First, you want to ask your potential supervisor if mentorship is something that they offer to students, and what type of mentorship you can expect. So be aware that not every advisor knows what mentorship is, and not everyone will be prepared to answer this question. In this case, if you notice that the advisor is not quite ready to discuss it, it probably means that you should not expect a proper mentorship to be part of your PhD. After you talk to your advisor, also try to talk to the students and alumni from the group. The best way is to first ask the advisor if you can talk to the students in their group. If possible, my strong suggestion is to avoid being sneaky and doing things behind the back of your advisor because, well, it kind of sends the wrong message. So you want to ask that permission first, if it's okay to talk to their group members. However, when it comes to alumni, it's totally fine to reach out to them without letting their previous advisor know. So ask them what they liked and what they did not like about their experience and what advice they would give you. And don't be afraid to ask alumni more questions. This is your future, and you're the only person who can get the right information. Next is, what publications do you expect to get? One of the key outcomes of a PhD is publications. We all know it. They can become your tickets to the next position, be it a postdoc, faculty or somewhere in R&D, or they can break your academic career if the quality of publications is low. So my advice is to read the advisor's publications from the last 3 to 5 years. Don't just scroll through. Make sure that you dig deep into them and you understand their scope, the scientific depth, and the impact. 3 things: scope, depth, impact. In my experience, many students do not quite read the papers of their potential advisor before joining the lab. But those papers, they can tell you a lot of important information. For example, how often do PhD students become first authors? It's quite easy to check. When it doesn't happen, Was the first author the key contributor? How many papers does a PhD student publish on average in this group compared to the number of papers published by senior members or staff scientists or professors as first authors? What are the individual contributions of PhD students? And so for this, you want to check the contribution section. Did they play key roles in the studies? Did they get access to instruments that you wish to use yourself? Often those contribution sections, they contain the information about which author contributed which part of the data. Next, who are their collaborators? Does the first authorship often go to the collaborators or your advisor students? There are groups where a professor offers first authorship to collaborators just to keep them happy. Certainly, it's okay when collaborators are among the first in the list. However, you should be careful if this becomes omnipresent, if this is the case for many publications. Finally, what is the quality of their research? Is it high enough to keep you happy? If you're not sure, ask your previous advisor or someone else from your current department to evaluate those papers. They can probably point out possible red flags if they exist. Normally, as a PhD student, you should also have your own first authorship papers. So you can have shared projects, or you may co-contribute to other studies where you will become a co-author. In some labs, students also have side projects, which are like small and, these small ideas that you can play with. Eventually, the side projects can also result in publications. So there are many ways a PhD student can publish papers. However, the articles where you become the first author and where your contribution is significant are normally viewed as your major outcome, especially in STEM disciplines. And this is why it's so important to understand what you can expect in this regard. Some students also want to publish in high impact factor journals because it facilitates their careers, especially in academia. I know that many of us, including myself, we don't like impact factors. But currently, the reality is that high impact papers attract more attention. So if you want to stay in academia, that can help. Doesn't mean it will, but it can help. And as a result, many students look for ways to publish in high impact factor journals. Some advisors do not support it, either because they don't want to wait for a long peer review process, or because they don't want to do a lot of extra experiments required by the editors, or maybe because they just think that the impact factor doesn't matter. But others may actually expect you to publish in high impact journals. So be aware that there is a big difference between advisors. Your choice as to which group to join should depend on what you want from your PhD. And your publications are a big part of it. Also, don't forget to ask about the number of papers that you're expected to publish before you can defend. There are many places that have very specific expectations, requirements on the number of papers, and you need to know if you can really fulfill those expectations within the time frame of your PhD. Finally, we get to one of the most essential parts of your search: the personality of a PhD advisor. There are a lot of things that can characterize the personal traits and the preferences of any manager, and a PhD advisor is no different. If there is no excitement that the supervisor expresses about you joining the group, it may be a red flag. It may imply that the professor is already overloaded or finds your project not as exciting. However, at the same time, it may also mean that the advisor is just not expressing emotions sufficiently well, despite being super interested in you. So try to explore what that project really means to your advisor. Next, does the advisor have time to meet you? If no, perhaps he or she won't be having enough time for regular meetings with you in the future. In this case, try to ask other students about their experience and see if that suits you. Another interesting question concerns experimental sciences. For example, will the professor allow you to use all types of instruments in the lab and maybe in shared facilities? Will all expenses be covered? As you probably know, the use of facilities costs money, and it can go pretty high sometimes. So not every student gets access to those facilities, but those facilities can substantially improve your technical skills. I personally see it as a great indicator of openness on advisor to your learning. Some advisors think that each student should excel at only one or two techniques and should not step kind of on the feet of others. Should not interfere with what others do. Others should contribute their own expertise, their own data to the project. In such cases, you will likely get fewer technical skills during PhD. But on the contrary, if you are allowed to be trained and use any facility, it means you will get more skills to master, which can be an incredible asset. Another important aspect is what is prioritized and what is emphasized in the lab. For example, in my opinion, too much focus on pushing papers out and too much emphasis on your productivity is a red flag. The focus should be on your development and your PhD, and not quite on fast and excessive publications, or making you drained in the lab. So your research is the platform where you develop. You develop yourself, your skills, your analytical thinking. So work after hours, it's not something that I would ever encourage. Also, some advisors may be interested to discuss your personal development, while others will try to change the topic. So be attentive to this and think about the following questions. How does the advisor prefer to guide students? How specifically? What does supervision and mentoring means to the advisor? What feedback does the advisor want to hear during PhD? So these questions can tell you, I think, a lot about the personal preferences and the personality of your advisor. Try to explore them as much as you can, because you will be with your advisor for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, what should you ask your potential advisor? Most students are not ready to interview their potential advisor, either because they think that getting an offer is enough, or because they don't know the questions to ask. In any case, I think it's a big mistake. Not every group is friendly. Not every professor is a good mentor. I would even say that in general, mentorship is not prioritized in academia. There are great mentors, but they're not abundant. Now, I'm going to quickly go over the questions that I find most essential and universal. Of course, there are many more that you can look at and you can come up with, and you should definitely tailor these questions to your disciplines. So the questions you can ask a potential advisor are: first, what does research supervision mean to you, and how do you do it in the group? Through this question, you can see how the advisor understands supervision, what is important and what is less prioritized. Then you can compare the answer to what the students in the group say about their experience. Number 2, do you provide mentorship, and what kind? How do you encourage personal development of the students? Here you will see that if the advisor thinks that mentorship is important, and how much emphasis does he or she put on personal development of students. Number 3, how do you normally organize collaborations? What is the role of students and postdocs in it? So when it comes to collaborations, different advisors can have completely different approaches that depend on the situation, meaning that there is no single and perfect answer. However, you will be able to see if the approach of your potential advisor is something that you want to learn and maybe follow during your PhD. For example, in one group, a professor may prefer that you make samples and send them out to different groups for measurements, which later you put together into a paper. In another group, a professor may do it differently. So you make your samples and do half of the analysis while closely collaborating with the second group on the measurements that are not accessible to you. So then you directly get involved in those experiments. As a result, the first approach can make research go faster, but the second approach may help you learn more about different measurements and different techniques. And so there could be all sorts of other options, and my strong suggestion is to explore that. Try to understand what your daily work will look like. Number 4, how do students develop independence and confidence in research in your group? And this is a very important question because it can help you see whether or not the advisor focuses on personal development of students. Independence is very hard to build. It takes time, it takes failures, and a lot of support and advice from your supervisor. Some professors do not want to see independence in their students because they prefer to micromanage the research in their group. The reason could be that, for example, the research goes faster if students do not experience a lot of failures. Other professors prefer that their students start the PhD under heavy supervision and then quickly transition to independence. For example, myself, I prefer the second approach. Now, there are different levels of independence. Some professors have no time and want to see their students doing research as much independently as possible. At the same time, other professors prefer making a moderate input into the progress of their students because this allows the students to go faster and deeper into science. Number 5, which conferences and workshops do your students typically attend? And how many, let's say, during PhD? So different labs can have completely different policies for conferences and travel. Most often, restrictions can come from the funding source or the group leader. So funding can be limited, and so the number of conferences you can attend may be rather small. But it is also quite common that professors have specific policies as to when your work is ready to be presented at a conference. For example, many groups do not present unpublished work. Myself, I try to avoid that. So I try to say, well, my students can present work in unpublished state because I think it's important. It contributes to their personal development. But in some cases, projects can be the ones that go under the non-disclosure agreements, or they may present results that could trigger competitive groups to catch up. However, publishing can take years, and this policy can limit the number of conferences you attend during your PhD. So it does not mean that you should be avoiding such labs, but you should know that limitations exist and you may face them during your PhD. So figure out how many conferences you really want to attend and what they may help you with and what is expected in that specific group. Number 6, what is your style of preparing research publications? How do you distribute authors? How do you define a contribution to a paper? What time does a manuscript take? I already said that publications are essential because they're the final products of your research. I don't think it's a PhD thesis. I think it's the publications. In most disciplines, the publications are peer-reviewed and they're viewed as the final product. Some professors may have what I would call a non-traditional way to distribute authors in the list. If you have suspicions that the students do not often appear as first authors of on their manuscripts, which you can check, of course, inside the manuscripts on their websites, you can try to gently ask this question and see what professor says. Also, the time it takes to write a manuscript can vary significantly between different groups. Some professors prefer to write and publish manuscripts quickly, which may help you in the next, career steps because you will have more papers published. But it may produce lower quality papers in some cases. Others, they may like to let the manuscripts brew until the quality becomes sufficiently high. However, this can result in delayed publications. So you may experience difficulty finding the next positions, especially in academia. Number 7. Will you be at this university for the next 4 to 5 years? Well, this question may sound a bit strange, but faculties move from one university to another. Some take sabbaticals, and this can hugely affect your PhD experience in a negative or positive way depending on the circumstances and depending on your preferences. So if you know what to expect, you will be prepared. Number 8. What is an ideal PhD student for you? This question can reveal a lot. Some professors prefer very workaholic students who can complete their projects on time. Others prefer very thoughtful students who do not rush to complete the projects, but look for ways to improve it and for ways to increase the impact and sort of develop the vision for possible research directions for this project. I know professors who want to be updated on the progress every week. So for them, an ideal student would be the one who can show that progress. And there are also those who care about the progress over maybe about half a year, which means that an ideal student for them is an autonomous student who can work independently and can update them once in whatever number of months. In some groups, an ideal student is the one who wants to be mentored and who listens carefully. And for other groups, it can be the person who acts as a mini PI and leads their own research direction. In either case, because there are no universally ideal PhD students, this question of what is an ideal PhD student for you, it shows what ideality means in each group. So here my advice is not to become an ideal student for your potential advisor. Try to see if you can be a great fit in that group without completely changing your personality or trying to adapt to become an ideal student for your supervisor. Every student is different, and this diversity in thinking, in interests, preferences, approaches, and in education is very important for science. So, in my personal group, in my experience, a great group is the one that embraces this diversity rather than enforcing a uniformity over students. Let's say you have a choice between two advisors. One advisor says an ideal student is the one that comes at 8 a.m. in the morning, works until 6 p.m., keeps the advisor updated on the progress on a weekly basis, who is a chemist with the highest grades possible. Okay. The second advisor says that an ideal student is the one who can contribute new knowledge and experience to our group, has a deep passion for science and engineering, and is ready to disseminate the research and knowledge at conferences, who's also ready to take risk and know when it's the right time to look for the advice. So as you can see, there is a substantial difference between these two advisors. And there are all sorts of expectations and preferences that professors can have. If you understand them better, especially in advance, you'll be able to make a much better decision when you choose your PhD advisor. Number 9. How do you envision your lab development for the next 5 years? What are your goals? So this question can help you understand what the lab environment will be like during your PhD. Some labs do not change much, and other labs can evolve all the time. So knowing in advance the trajectory of the lab can help you, make the right decision. Number 10, what is the teaching load? Many PhD students have obligations to teach. Teaching can be quite fun, and it can be quite important for your own development. but such duties can also take much time from your research. So make sure you know in advance what the department really expects from you. Number 11, will I be able to attend workshops that can help me expand my knowledge and skills? How many conferences during PhD can I go to? What facilities can I use? What experiments will be possible with the available budget? So not every advisor is ready to discuss how much budget they have, but in some cases it's possible. And PhD positions normally have limited funding. If your potential advisor can say how much you will have for project expenses, for, say, travel, for conferences, for facilities, for salary, and so on, you will know what to expect. Number 12, will the budget be available for your entire PhD? In some cases, the project may end earlier due to the budget cuts, or maybe because the project was originally for a short amount of time than your PhD. So this is a reasonable question to ask, at least in my opinion. And then if your funding ends unexpectedly and you cannot finish your project in time before you defend, then you need to understand what kind of support you can expect. Will you have more time to finish your studies and defend, or will you have to leave the lab without getting a PhD? This is not a common situation, of course, but still I know students who were not able to defend in time. When you discuss it with your advisor, you should not say it in a way that implies that you will not be able to finish the project in time. So my suggestion is to politely ask about what happens after funding ends, because you want to have the right expectations before you can come. Now, the last question is, what are the expected work hours and workload? Basically, are you expected to work from 9 to 5, or from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., or on weekends? Different advisors set very different expectations. Some advisors may say that they expect you to be in the lab from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m., which may put some constraints on you, especially if you want some flexibility or some free time. Others can say that you cannot work from home more than a week per day. If you decide that you want to ask this question, don't forget that some advisors may see it as a red flag. They may think that you just don't want to work, or maybe you're not a really hard-working student. Of course, this is a wrong approach. So myself, I never think this way. But since, the world is not fair and academia is very far from perfect, I personally think that it's important that you understand and you can evaluate the possible consequences of different questions. Of course, you don't have to ask all these questions exactly this way. You should definitely tweak them to your own needs. Now, what else can you do to find the right advisor and to know if this lab is a great fit for you? I will go over several more tips that I think can help you, and I personally find them very important. Number 1 is, if you're invited to an interview or you're already inside the department, talk to the students and postdocs in the lab. Normally, the current students do not say that there is something wrong inside the lab. You need to carefully craft questions such that you can understand the real group culture and what the students really think about the advisor. For example, are you happy here? And what specifically makes you happy about the lab? What type of support do you get from the advisor? Can you give me more details on this? So these questions can help you extrapolate their experience to your case. Always look for these details. Details are key. Do you work alone or in teams? What is the role of the advisor? What autonomy and freedom do you have? Can you please specify it? So when asking these questions, don't forget that every student can have a unique experience because their projects and expectations can be very different. So explore more widely. How fast does the advisor respond to your emails? What are the weaknesses of your advisor? I know it sounds kind of strange, but it's a good question. In your interactions with the advisor, what do you wish to be different? So these are very important questions because they will tell you if you're okay with the weaknesses of the advisor. Everyone has weaknesses, everyone. But not every weakness makes a good fit. Try to find out if you are a good fit. What is your opinion about the lab culture? If your experiments fail, how does the advisor react? Really, the reaction of an advisor to students' failures can tell you a lot. It can be a big red flag or a strong green light. Some advisors react inappropriately, so it's easy to spot it. And some other advisors see a failure as an opportunity to help you learn from it. So I really, really like such advisors. Other questions may involve how often do you go to conferences, how long does it take to write a paper, and so on. So come up with your own questions. Finally, there is another question that you may want to ask, which is, did you have students leaving the lab and not defending? And if yes, why did it happen? Well, students can leave their PhD program for many reasons. So the mere fact that the lab had this experience does not mean that your PhD will go badly. But of course, there are many cases where students left because of the advisor's mistakes. You can also ask the potential advisor this question. But because not every advisor will be happy to go into these details, I would keep it as a good question for the current group members. And finally, always prepare a list of questions that you find important for your case. So literally make a list of questions so you don't forget them. The second point that I want to discuss is the alumni. So check out the alumni. Google the names, see where they went to, and when they left the lab, who they became. Reach out by email. You can use LinkedIn. Explain your intentions. Ask for a quick call. Just make sure you're polite and professional. And look at the following aspects. Which position did they receive after leaving the lab, and where do they work now? How many of them became professors or senior scientists? If you want to pursue an academic career, this information is very important. So you want to find a lab that has those alumni in academia. What about their publication list? What about their awards and other achievements? Are they close to what you expect to get from your PhD? The same concerns entrepreneurship. Are there many founders who came out of this group? If yes, perhaps there is something that sets the alumni on this track. And finally, do they hold the positions in industry that you can imagine taking yourself? So try to understand what role the advisor played in their success. Now, you may ask, why is it all so important? So many students ask this, and I usually would say the following. It's important because, generally, you should not expect that your PhD will go a lot better than for other students in that group. This is why it's so important to understand the experience of alumni, their research papers, their awards, what kind of jobs they landed after a PhD. It's again because it's very rare that you would stand out as a PhD student among many other alumni inside the same group. It's rare. So try to explore what they had. And the final piece of advice that I want to give is do not forget that you can talk to the people in the neighboring groups. They may be in the same department, same building, but because they're not dependent on your potential advisor, they're not in their group. They can tell you what they really hear about this specific group. Of course, these are rumors, so rumors may be just rumors. So you need to ask them specific questions as always. But normally, a great group inside the department would not generate negative rumors. That's very rare. With this, we're getting to the end of this episode. So I hope that you've learned something new and useful for yourself. And I also hope that it will help you find the right advisor who has the best fit with your personality, your dreams, and your expectations. I wish you best of luck.